Take a quick pause. Did you know that over 90% of you watching haven't hit the subscribe button yet? If you're enjoying this video, take a second to subscribe and hit the like button. It helps us bring you more gripping stories every day. Also, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments so we can see how far our stories are reaching. Your support really keeps us going. Now, let's jump back into the video. I used to think that love, real love, was something you could see in the little things. The way her hand always found mine in a crowded room. The soft humming she did in the kitchen when she thought no one was listening. The quiet smile she wore when I walked through the door after a long day. Tonight, as we pulled up to the restaurant, I wanted to believe those little things still meant something. It was our 10th anniversary. 10 years? A full decade of shared holidays, inside jokes, difficult conversations, and quiet mornings with coffee and newspapers. The place I chose was the same restaurant where I proposed. Back then, I could barely sit still, palms sweating as I fumbled with the ring box in my pocket. She wore a blue dress that night, same shade as the one she wore now. I remember thinking she looked like something out of a dream. And now, sitting across from her, under the soft glow of hanging lights, I wished I still felt the same certainty. There had been a change lately, a quiet shift I couldn't put into words. It was subtle, like waking up one morning and realizing the walls of your home were a different color than you remembered. 10 years, I said, lifting my glass of wine. We made it. She smiled, and it looked right, but not quite real. We did, she replied, clinking her glass to mine. Time flies. We talked about the usual things, our jobs, our plans to maybe travel this fall, a neighbor's new baby. But her eyes flicked toward her phone too often. Her laugh didn't quite reach her eyes. And something deep in my chest, an instinct I had tried to ignore for weeks, began to stir. After dinner, I excused myself to the restroom. When I returned, I saw her stepping away from the table, phone to her ear, voice low. The hallway behind the main dining room was dim, lined with potted plants and framed photographs. I don't think she knew I was there at first. I don't think she meant for me to hear. I know. I miss you too, she whispered. I can't stay long, he's going to wonder. Silence. A soft laugh. Then, it's not like that. He's sweet, but we don't have that spark anymore. I just feel like I'm fading in this marriage. You make me feel alive. My feet rooted to the floor. My heart didn't race, it slowed. Everything around me sharpened and dulled at once. I should have felt anger, rage. But instead, I felt cold clarity, like standing in the middle of a snowstorm, letting it fall on bare skin. She ended the call quickly and returned to the table before I did. I waited a few seconds, letting my face settle. When I walked back, she was sipping her wine, eyes flicking up with an almost too bright smile. Everything okay? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, just a bit of a line. We ordered dessert. She talked about a new art exhibit coming to the city. I listened, nodded, smiled when it was expected. The words barely registered. My mind was already moving elsewhere, quietly, methodically. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't ask questions I already knew the answers to. Instead, I held her hand in the car. I kissed her on the cheek when we got home. And when she fell asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the echo of her whispered words running through my mind. The next morning, I sent a message to someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year, my old college roommate, Daniel. He worked in cybersecurity now, freelance mostly, and owed me a favor from way back. The kind of favor that comes with no questions asked. Hey, need help discreetly monitoring a phone? Nothing illegal, just some clarity. You in? His reply came within minutes. If it's for you, I'm in. Let's talk. That weekend, I met Daniel at a quiet coffee shop across town. We talked over cappuccinos, surrounded by the warm hum of chatter and clinking cups. I told him just enough. No names, no emotions, just facts. He gave me a small device no larger than a thumb drive. Install this on the home Wi-Fi, he said. It'll mirror activity from her phone to a secure portal. Texts, call logs, GPS. Nothing invasive, nothing you couldn't legally access in a family device plan. But it'll give you a clearer picture? I nodded, the device feeling heavy in my pocket. Thanks. Daniel looked at me for a long moment. You sure you want to know? I already do, I said. I just don't know who. He didn't press further. That night, while she showered, I plugged the device into the back of our router. It took less than a minute. Afterward, I sat on the edge of our bed and stared at my reflection in the black screen of the television. My face looked older, more tired, less sure. The following days passed like a slow-moving tide. We kept up appearances, laughing over dinner, holding hands at the farmer's market, smiling at friends during brunch. But underneath, I was unraveling in silence. Every notification from Daniel felt like a ripple across the still surface of a lake. Text threads, contact names, locations that didn't match her, explanations. Her messages were careful but not cautious enough. They were affectionate, impulsive. They revealed more than she knew. And slowly the pieces began to form a shape I wasn't ready for. One name came up repeatedly. J. Just an initial. Always in the middle of the day. Sometimes late at night when I was working in my home office. The messages weren't explicit, but they carried a weight I couldn't ignore. Words like miss you, counting the hours, and I wish I were with you instead. The last one struck a nerve. I didn't tell Daniel what I was finding. I didn't tell anyone. I still smiled at my wife in the morning, still kissed her on the forehead before bed. But inside, a quiet storm brewed. Not rage, not bitterness, just an aching kind of clarity. Then one night, Daniel sent a message that made my hands go still on the keyboard. Got something. FaceTime log. She called him last night for 17 minutes. Pulled metadata, his name is Jeremy. Jeremy. I stared at the name on the screen for a long time. I knew a Jeremy, but not just any Jeremy. My stomach turned cold. It was the best man at our wedding. I sat at the kitchen table long after the sun had gone down, the only light coming from the glow of my laptop. The name Jeremy hovered on the screen, as if taunting me with its casual presence. It wasn't a name pulled from obscurity, it was personal, familiar, trusted. Jeremy had been my best friend since high school. We'd been inseparable through college, stood at each other's weddings, laughed over countless beers, and shared stories we'd never told anyone else. He was the kind of friend who knew how I liked my coffee, who remembered the song I played on repeat when I was grieving my father. And now, apparently, he was the man who made my wife feel alive. There wasn't a surge of anger. No table flipped, no curse screamed into the air. Instead, my breath left me in one long, quiet exhale. It was the sound of something shifting deep inside, a fracture in a foundation I once believed was unshakable. I didn't go to bed that night. I couldn't. Instead, I watched the messages Daniel had pulled, screenshots of texts from days and weeks past. There were no photos, no overt declarations of love, but the meaning between the lines was unmistakable. She joked with him in a way she hadn't with me in years. She opened herself, emotionally, with a rawness I hadn't seen since the early days of our relationship. She told him about the dreams she had, the ones she used to share with me. She told him about me too, but not with hatred. Worse than that, with indifference. She described me as kind, reliable, gentle. Words that once meant everything to me now sounded like the ingredients of a meal she used to enjoy but no longer craved. It was Jeremy she confided in about her doubts, her restlessness, her craving for something more. And he, in turn, fed her that longing with every message, every subtle affirmation that she deserved better, that she deserved him. I didn't respond to any of it. I didn't even tell Daniel what I had discovered. Instead, I waited. Not because I had a plan yet, but because I needed the whole truth. All of it. Not the version she might offer me if confronted. Not the partial confession designed to protect her image or soften the blow. I needed to see it for myself, unfiltered and unprovoked. Over the next week, I continued to collect data. Daniel's system kept everything stored privately, encrypted, and secure. I set up alerts to notify me when certain keywords were used. My name, his name, or anything that suggested a meeting. I wasn't just trying to catch them in the act, I was trying to understand the depth, the timeline, how long this had been going on. It turned out longer than I'd feared. The messages dated back nearly 8 months. It had started slowly. Friendly exchanges after a group dinner, playful jokes, shared memories. Then, as time passed, the tone shifted. Longer replies, more vulnerability. It was like watching the slow erosion of a cliffside, each wave subtle but devastating in its accumulation. They met at least 3 times without my knowledge. Once when she told me she was visiting her sister. Another during a work conference I had been too busy to attend. The third was unclear, but she mentioned in a text how nervous she felt afterward, how real everything had suddenly become. And through it all, she came home to me. We ate dinner together, we watched movies, we made weekend plans. She smiled at me with the same mouth that whispered to him in secret. There were moments I questioned myself, wondered if I had failed her in ways I didn't see. Had I become so predictable, so comfortable, that she stopped seeing me as someone to love and started seeing me as someone to manage? Was I partly to blame? But those thoughts faded quickly. Whatever cracks had formed in our relationship, betrayal was a choice. And she hadn't just betrayed me, she had enlisted someone I loved and trusted to help her do it. I began to notice small things I had overlooked before. How she lingered in the shower longer than usual. How she angled her phone away from me when texting. How she no longer invited Jeremy over when we hosted dinner parties. At the time, I'd assumed they'd just drifted apart. Now I saw it for what it was: self-preservation. Guilt wrapped in distance. One evening, while she was out running errands, I sat on the couch with an old photo album. Our wedding pictures were tucked inside, pages worn at the edges from years of leafing through them. I stared at the image of her and Jeremy, his arm draped casually around her shoulder, both of them laughing at something I couldn't remember. The way they looked at each other then, it wasn't obvious, but now, with everything I knew, I saw it. There was something in her eyes, something I had missed. She came home that night and kissed me on the cheek. Her lips were soft, familiar. And yet I flinched slightly, not out of anger, but because I felt like I was kissing a memory instead of a person. "I'm thinking of planning something special for your birthday," she said cheerfully, dropping her purse on the hallway bench. "Any ideas?" "No," I said, smiling thinly. "Surprise me." And she would. She already had. I called Daniel the next day. I didn't tell him the full truth, but enough. "I know who it is." He didn't ask for the name. "What now?" he asked. "I don't know yet, but I need to see them. Together. I need that final piece." "You sure?" "I've come this far." Daniel sighed on the other end. "I can install a lightweight tracker, just for 1 week. It'll ping you when both devices are within close range, like a geofence." "Do it." It took only a day. He updated the portal and showed me how to check the proximity alerts. If their phones appeared at the same location for longer than 20 minutes, I'd know. 2 nights later, I got the notification. Match, 22 minutes. Location, 318 Clay Avenue. Private residence. She told me she was having dinner with a friend from work. I didn't ask questions. I didn't show any sign that I knew. Instead, I got in my car and drove to Clay Avenue. I didn't go to the front door. I didn't knock. I parked 2 houses down, windows up, engine off. The house wasn't Jeremy's. That would have been too obvious. But the car in the driveway was his. Her car was parked further down, almost hidden behind a tall hedge. The windows were lit. Shadows moved behind the curtains, soft outlines that danced when they walked past. I stayed for an hour. I didn't need to see anything explicit. I didn't need to hear anything. The silence around me was enough. It pressed in, filling every space where trust used to live. On the way home, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just drove in silence, hands steady on the wheel. When I got home, she was already in bed. I stood in the doorway watching her sleep. Her face was peaceful, unburdened. I wondered what she dreamed about. I wondered if she saw his face there too. I slipped into bed beside her, careful not to wake her. My heart beat slowly, evenly, like it had resigned itself to a new rhythm. Tomorrow, I would decide what came next. But tonight, I would lie beside the woman I married, knowing that she was already gone. The morning after I watched them together, I awoke before she did. Her breathing was soft, her body curled slightly toward my side of the bed. I lay still, observing her for a long while, unsure if I was trying to find the woman I married in her features, or trying to accept that she was no longer there. When she finally stirred, she smiled at me like she always did. A sleepy, affectionate smile that once felt like sunlight. Now it was just an echo, something rehearsed. "Morning," she murmured. "Morning," I replied, my voice steady, calm. She sat up and stretched, then turned toward me and kissed my shoulder. The same shoulder she used to cry into. The same one Jeremy must have seen bare, held onto, kissed. The images came uninvited, but I didn't let them consume me. I was past the fire now. What remained was quiet. Still. Like standing in the ashes of a house that used to be a home. She chatted through breakfast, describing a conversation she had with her coworker, the new cafe that had opened on the east side, an upcoming work dinner. I listened without interruption, nodding in the right places, sipping my coffee as if nothing inside me had changed. But everything had. Later that day, I met Daniel again. We sat in his garage, the warm smell of engine oil and sawdust around us. It used to be where we talked about basketball, road trips, and vacation plans. Now it felt like a war room. I handed him a flash drive with all the backup files, texts, timestamps, call logs. He'd helped me more than he ever expected to, and I owed him honesty now. "It's Jeremy," I said finally. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "You're Jeremy?" I nodded. He sat back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "Man, that's twisted." "Yeah." He didn't say much after that. He didn't need to. There are moments where words do more harm than good, and Daniel understood silence the way few people do. "So what are you going to do?" he asked eventually. "I don't know," I said. "But I'm not blowing up my life in a rage. I want clarity. I want control." "You've already got more of that than most people would." That night, I printed some of the messages. Not all of them, just the ones that mattered. Enough to paint the picture. Enough to strip away the deniability. I sealed them in an envelope and wrote her name across it in small, neat letters. And then I waited. I didn't wait long. 2 days later, she left her phone in the kitchen while she showered. A notification lit up the screen. Jeremy's name followed by a preview of the message. "Same time tomorrow?" Can't stop thinking about last night. I didn't look further. I didn't need to. The message was enough. The weight of the truth I'd carried alone now had a timestamp, a punctuation mark. I placed the envelope on her pillow before heading out. No note, no explanation, just the evidence. When I returned that evening, she was sitting on the edge of the bed, the envelope beside her, her face pale and unreadable. Her eyes lifted to mine, wide and wet. "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked. I didn't answer her question directly. "How long?" I asked instead. She hesitated, then swallowed. "Almost 9 months." I nodded. I already knew. I just needed her to say it. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she continued, her voice trembling. "It started as just conversations. I didn't plan it." "No one ever does," I replied. "I never meant to hurt you. You just did it anyway." She stood, arms wrapping around herself like she was cold. He understood me in a way I haven't felt in years. I tried to ignore it, I swear. But every time we talked, I felt seen, not just tolerated. That hit harder than I expected. Tolerated. Like I had become a burden she managed out of obligation. "I loved you," I said calmly. "Still do in some strange way. But I don't think you've loved me for a long time." She wiped at her face, tears streaming freely now. "I do love you. It's just I lost myself somewhere, and I didn't know how to get back." "And you thought Jeremy could help you find yourself?" She didn't answer. There was a pause, thick, raw, endless. "I didn't tell you because I was afraid," she said. "I knew what it would mean, what I would lose." "You weren't afraid to lie," I said, "only afraid to be found out." Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. That night, we didn't fight. We didn't scream. There were no accusations hurled across the room. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, the distance between us louder than any argument could have been. In the following days, we had quiet conversations. Polite, necessary, and hollow. We talked about logistics, bank accounts, the house, our friends. We didn't talk about feelings, we couldn't. The space between our words had become too wide to cross. I saw Jeremy only once after that, by accident, in a coffee shop downtown. He looked up from his table and froze when he saw me. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Regret? Shame? Maybe even fear. I didn't approach him. I didn't make a scene. I simply met his gaze for a moment and then walked away. That was the last time I ever saw him. As for her, we parted on civil terms. No screaming matches, no legal battles. Just a shared understanding that whatever we had once built together had cracked in too many places to be repaired. She moved out 2 weeks later, left behind a few books, an old sweater, and an empty drawer. I stayed. Some nights, the silence was unbearable. I'd sit in the living room listening to the ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft creaks of a house adjusting to new emptiness. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of hoping she'd choose me. Tired of holding on to something she'd already let go of. But with time, that exhaustion turned into peace. I started going on walks again, reaching out to old friends, rebuilding my own identity. Not as a husband, but as myself. I realized how much I had let the relationship define me, how long I'd been walking in a shadow I didn't even know existed. One afternoon, I found myself driving past a small coastal town we once visited. I pulled over, got out of the car, and stood by the ocean. The air was sharp and clean, the waves crashing rhythmically against the shore. And for the first time in what felt like years, I let myself breathe without the weight of her beside me. I wasn't healed yet, not completely, but I was free. And that was a beginning. Not of the life I thought I'd have, but of one I'd choose, fully awake this time, with eyes wide open and no more secrets in the dark.